Good afternoon and welcome to CEC Gurukul lecture. In today's series on symbolic expression, we have with us Ms. Manisha, who is going to translate the lecture into sign language. In today's lecture, we are going to talk about the discipline of sociology. Sociology as the science of society. So we need to understand what is the discipline, how it is related to other social science discipline, how it emerged, and what are its scope and significance of studying sociology. So to start off, we know that sociology is the study of society. But study of society did not start with sociology because it was there already. So the study of society is as old as human thought. Sociology is a newer discipline. It just had its start within the 19th century. And therefore, we need to understand how was society studied before the discipline, and that is prehistoric period of sociology. Bottomer, a known sociologist, identifies two ideologies. One was the philosophy of liberals and radicals that was influenced by Enlightenment. Now, Enlightenment was a period where there was a kind of a movement in the Western countries to separate church from politics or separate the church from state. And it goes on with the Reformation movement, in which it was required that religion kind of gets separated, and religion and politics are completely two different domains. The second ideology was the possibility of incorporating conservative views. Conservative views because people did not want to bring about change. The status quo was to be maintained. And therefore, there was a group of scholars who advocated the preservation of existing order. 20th century thinkers, basically when we talk about the founding fathers of sociologists, we'll see were influenced by this ideology, and it was within this that the discipline of sociology emerged. So how do we look into it? We see that it emerged in Europe, and in the predates, the foundation of the discipline can be traced back to philosophy. So society was being studied by philosophers, by Greek scholars, by number of Arabic scholars, and lot of in other parts of the world. So one of the initial study of society was by the Greek philosopher Plato. His work is called Republic, which was published in 427 to 347 BC. The second work is Aristotle, Ethics and Politics. Now these two are very important work because they talk about law, state and society. But then it was more philosophical, it was more at the level of abstraction. So much of the study of society before the discipline of sociology emerged, or rather got institutionalized, society was studied from the dimension of religion, from politics and other kind of dimensions like ethics, philosophy. What happened is that the writings of Arabian scholars also influenced the study of sociology. In India, we see the study of society goes back to the Upanishads, Sutras and Puranas. All these literary texts are talking about society. They are talking about maintaining moral order. They are talking about how there is a relation between state and society. But these are not purely sociological texts. Now, how do we look into the emergence of sociology as a discipline? Is to locate it within the context of social upheaval or transformation. So the discipline emerged out of the industrial revolution that had begun. So by the middle of 19th century, Europe's economy was changing from agriculture to factory production. This revolution that kind of forced the people to change the mode of occupation. So agriculture was no longer considered a source of employment. People were setting up large-scale industry. This triggered off the movement of people from rural area to urban area. Now, once this movement started, people started taking up different kind of work. So their livelihood changed, the employer-employee relation changed, their modes of interaction with community, with the people started changing. And this large-scale transformation was kind of conceptualized as moving from a simple society to a complex society, from an individual society to, from a community-based society to an individualistic society. Now, this social upheaval was kind of bringing about concern in the minds of lot of thinkers and scholars, because it was leading to large number of phenomena, social phenomena like migration, change in work pattern, and also separation of the earning member from the rest of the family. So when we're looking into the institution of family in the Indian context, there were people who were moving from large size family to smaller size family in the urban sector. So the life was no longer same. Social life, economic life was not longer same. And therefore, the concern was to raise questions about social life no longer could be counted on. So you needed new theories to make sense of society. And it is within this sense of asking questions, of trying to make sense of the new social order, that the discipline of sociology emerged. Now, along with the Industrial Revolution, there were other two revolutions that influenced the discipline, and that is the twin revolution of French and Industrial Revolution. So thinkers were concerned about trying to find out the ways by which the society was being affected by the revolution. So the French Revolution brought in the concern about liberty, about light of kind of freedom, and therefore the concern was to kind of break up from certain conditions of social institutions which were considered as bonding, and therefore new ways of life was emerging. Now this new way of life was more also located in the urban area, and it was conceptualized as urbanism or urban way of life. So it is this understanding of the change and transformation which was taking place because of revolutions, the French Revolution, the Industrial Revolution, and the Reformation. So these are the three contexts within which we can understand the emergence of the discipline. Now we know that society had been studied by a number of philosophers and scholars, but when we talk about sociology, the term was coined for the first time by Auguste Comte. He was a French philosopher and a sociologist. He was trying to find out a science of society. So he was looking into the ways in which the transformations could be predicted and certain laws could be established to determine the relationship between members of society. Auguste Comte defined sociology as the science of social phenomena subject to natural invariable laws, the discovery of which is the subject of investigation. So his idea was that we needed a method by which the entire society could be classified, observed, certain laws established, and these laws would be the subject of study of sociologists. He advocated the use of positivist method as used in the natural sciences because he wanted positive result. So as I said, that the ideology that affected the emergence of the discipline was conservative. So you wanted to maintain that status quo. So you wanted to always see the positive side of the change, how it was kind of impacting the society. Along with Auguste Comte, we have another pioneer, which is Herbert Spencer. He gave us the evolutionary approach. Now this entire transition that was taking place from agrarian to, say, industry, from rural to urban, was put on an evolutionary plane. That is, as society is moving, there is progress, there is development. So a category was established where those which was in the past was kind of considered as less developed, than those in the future. So you were moving from a simple society to a complex society. And thinkers were making sense of this by saying that industrial urban society has a complex division of labor. Complex in the sense that there are number of works that individuals are doing, yet they are independent on each other. So Durkheim used the concept of organic solidarity. Similarly, economic perspective, people were saying that there is a shift from collective ownership of property to private ownership, which was leading to the formation of class relation. So Karl Marx tells us that there was a change in the economy from home-based consumption to market-based, and that's where factories were set up. When factories were set up, it created two classes. One class who owned the factory, who owned the capital, and the other who had to work on that. So it created the inequality in the social order. So that is how evolution was being understood. The most prominent pioneer is obviously Spencer, and Spencer takes it from organic analogy. He says that you have to compare it similarly. So just in the natural world, there is organic is growing. These organics are moving from the matter, the world of matter, to the natural world. And then the evolution ends with the social or the human world. So evolution means differentiation and integration. So as you're moving from one to the other, there is difference, but yet it's getting integrated. Spencer asserted that society was like an organism or living body. But this assertion was more analogy than a reality, because living organ has, each part has a specific function to perform, and that function is kind of inherent in the organism. It doesn't change, and one part does not kind of appropriate the function of the other. In social reality, there is a lot of appropriation, there is a lot of exploitation. So it cannot work in terms of like a organic matter, and therefore this organic analogy does not fit into explaining social reality. Spencer wrote a number of works. Some of them are social statistics, principles of sociology, and the man versus state. These are all based on the idea of evolutionary. So from evolutionary perspective, we had this functional perspective, that just as the evolutionary considered society as an organism, functionalists said that these different parts of the organism have a function to perform, but each part performs its own part in order to contribute to the maintenance of the whole. So society was seen as consisting of various parts, and each part functional for maintenance of the status quo or solidarity. Now, if we look into the institutionalization of the discipline, in the sense that sociology starts becoming a course and being taught in the college and university, the first college course was set up in 1875 at Yale in United States by William Graham Sumner. In 1883, Lester F. Ward, who was the president of American Sociological Association, published Dynamic Sociology or Applied Social Sciences. So this was the first publication of sociology. The first formal department of sociology in the world was established by Albion Small at the University of Chicago in 1892. So we see that these were small activities which were going in different parts of the world, and sociology was being recognized as a formal discipline or a course of knowledge. However, the 19th century, whenever we think about the discipline of sociology, we refer to three critical minds, and that is Karl Marx, Max Weber, and Emil Durkheim. They are kind of considered as laying the foundation for institutionalization of sociology. Now, once we see this whole idea of social science and understanding of the emergence, we need to understand that it is a discipline which emerged out of modernity, because of the transition which was kind of paving the way towards modernity. And it's not only sociology, but a number of social science kind of started nurturing and growing, developing because of modern sciences. So social sciences, most of the social sciences are kind of regarded as being part of the process of formation of modernity, because with modernity there was too much of stress on rationality, on scientific knowledge, and it is there when the demand for so much of understanding or branches of knowledge was taken into care. Rather, modernity led to fragmentation of social sciences or knowledge by kind of institutionalizing different departments, targeting towards certain ways of understanding. But when we look at the social sciences and look in relation with sociology, we will see that there is a lot of similarity and differences are almost kind of negligible. Sociology emerged because of the nature of the discipline, because the discipline was to integrate into the social reality, how order was changing, how social change was affecting family, marriage, education, economy. So because of the nature of the discipline, modernity kind of led to the formation of a time and space where people could question, people could reflect on their behavior, people could reflect on their social relationship, and this became the ground for the genesis and development of sociology. Now, when we look into sociology as a discipline, we need to understand that it will have its own method, and method in the initial period of the emergence of the discipline was more close to scientific method. So the first step for sociological study identified by the key thinkers was to identify the nature of society. What kind of society are you studying? What are the kinds of institutions? How are individuals related to each other? And what is a society? A society has been defined as Gideon as number of like-minded individuals who are able to work together for a common goal. So we come together, we start doing certain economic activity, then we build on a political structure, the entire set of relationships are surrounded, and we work towards a same goal. After the inquiry into the nature of society, the next step is to brief study of the relation with sociology. Because these relations could be identified from different perspectives, from history, from pol science, from economics. What we as need to understand is what is the relationship with sociology. Some of the methods that were part of the sociological analysis were positive or experimental, formal or synthetic, and applied sociology. So the positive or experimental sociology, as the name itself says, was more close to the natural sciences. So what was the method? There was data collection, analysis of data, and classification of social fact. So on the basis of the data collected, the social reality could be classified. The second was synthetic or formal sociology. In this, there is a lot of formulation of hypothesis. Hypothesis would be a statement which needs to be proved false or true after the research has been carried out. And therefore, what was the hypothesis here? It would enable the sociologist to kind of arrive at certain laws which would help us to explain the social relation. The third is applied sociology. Applied sociology deals with social work. So as it is saying applied, means you need to apply your knowledge of the society to social work or social welfare. So it is more in terms of action. You kind of not only content by doing a finding and data analysis, after that you have to bring about some concrete change in society based on your study. What we need to understand when we are trying to understand the discipline of sociology is to see how it is related to other social sciences. The first is political science. Now, political science as a discipline deals with social group organized under the sovereignty of the state. So, political science basically, from a very simple statement, is doing about politics. And what is politics? Politics would be state, citizen, and kind of territory, sovereignty. So, when we as sociologists try to understand, we look at it as a social institution and group, or has kind of, we study state. It's not that sociologists do not study state, but the intention is different. We want to understand state as a social institution that affects the society, and that is what is kind of different from political science. Political science would be more interested in knowing the nature of the state in terms of laws, in terms of functioning and structure. But there is something very common among the two, is that both are trying to make sense of the relation between society and politics. Now, the next discipline is sociology and anthropology. Now, both sociology and anthropology are studying the society. Now, earlier there was this understanding that anthropology study the other society and sociologists study their own society. But recently there is a lot of debate in which this whole idea of anthropologists studying other and sociologists studying own has been debated. So basically both the disciplines studies culture, man, and his relationship with the society. Then we have the relation between sociology and economics. Now, economics is basically kind of talking about wealth in three spheres: production, consumption, and distribution. As economic process develops, the society is influenced by it, and it also influences the economy. So, economists are trying to understand the market, the social change in the economic sector. But we know that there is the concept of embeddedness. The economy is embedded in the social structure. So the two cannot be separated. And therefore, we have a number of sociologists who studied the economy and society. Sumner, Durkheim, Weber, Marx, they've all kind of considered the economic part aspect of society. And therefore, we have a branch called economic sociology as a specialized branch. So when we look into these relations, we also need to understand that sociology is kind of objective study of reality, which is different from the common sense. What sociology does is goes beyond what is kind of evident. So you have a debunking motive. You take out the layers and layers to go inside and see the reality, especially when it comes into certain taken for granted commonsensical knowledge like religion, economy, politics, caste. So sociology is telling us how to go beyond the common sense, yet the common sense understanding is what helps sociologists to study society. So sociologists test the insight created by common sense by looking into large amount of data, by doing kind of in-depth study, and therefore it contributes in kind of doing away with a number of commonsensical knowledge about social reality, and it also kind of helps us to undo the certain sets of assumptions, certain sense of myths which are associated. So critical sociology helps us to question social reality, and with that we can understand the change which is taking place. So we see the discipline of sociologists right from its emergence in Europe in the 19th century to today being part of being familiar in every part of the world, are kind of trying to question and understand reality as people live it. With this, I come to an end of today's lecture. Thank you.